薄いのアホ。
プリズムパワーメイクアップカードレディー。
Welcome to Shojo and Tell, where we discuss shoujo manga and tell who's hot and who's not, talk about themes, and just generally geek out. Today, July 16th, 2023, we'll be shoujo and telling about volumes 8 through 15 of the series Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts by Yu Tomofuji. I'm your host, Ashley McDonald, and I'm joined once again by Mackenzie of Mac Loves Manga. Hello, Mackenzie.
Hello, glad to be back again.
Back again for a second half long series, Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a little used to long series. I'm a fan of 70s shoujo, so I'm used to series running for like 20, 30 volumes. So.
Like all of them should run for 20 or 30 volumes.
Did Vampire Knight really need to run as long as it did?
Oh, throwing down. All right. Throwing down. I need to get to that series on this podcast. Mackenzie, for people who may not have listened to the first episode, who are you? What's your deal?
Well, you should listen to the first episode, otherwise you'll be very confused. But my name is Mackenzie McCullum. I am a Japanese historian and translator who lived in Japan for 10 years as a English as a second language teacher before the pandemic happened, and I moved back and got my job currently. But the reason I'm here now is I am a YouTuber, I guess, influencer, whatever you want to call it, and I run the YouTube channel Mac Loves Manga, where I talk about anime, manga, kind of otaku culture through a sort of historic lens and a focus on shoujo and josei, since there's like 100 One Piece channels, so it gets kind of redundant with the amount of shonen there is. So the shoujo and josei market isn't as tapped as much, and kind of inspired by Colleen's Manga Rex, Shoujo Sunday, and of course Shoujo and Tell, I started up my channel in November, and yeah, here I am. Though I haven't as of recording, I haven't uploaded in 2 months because the summer months are always ridiculously busy. I have like the reverse of a school year now, where it's like during the school year back when I was teaching, it was, the fall, spring, and then you have like summer break. For us, the summer is always kind of the busiest time of the year because that's when con season and licensing and everything's all going on, and that's always super busy. So I'm kind of been swamped with work a bit lately, but I'll get back around to it. Luckily, I did a guest spot for a friend of mine, Basic Boy, who does really great shoujo and josei content. Did a amazing video on the 12 Kingdoms that everyone should check out. It's like a month old at this point, but it's a great video. And then, of course, doing this two-parter here, so at least I get to talk about it, even if I can't really work on videos right now. And might as well talk about one of my favorite series of all time.
I agree. Everybody should just shout about their favorite series into the void of the internet all the time, especially when it's shoujo and josei related.
Yeah, there's not enough out there. That's
Truly.
for sure.
As you said, there's a million One Piece podcasts and like 10 shoujo ones. I'm like, all right, no, that's not enough.
Well, I mean, to give you an idea, there's another podcast that started recently, and they were able to get the Twitter handle and Instagram handle of Shoujo Podcast.
Wow.
So that should tell you just how few shoujo podcasts there are out there. So,
oh my gosh, I hate it.
So, I mean, there definitely needs to be a larger market out there, and I'm trying to do what I can there and kind of give my unique perspective as both, someone who works in the historian translating side, someone who lived in Japan, someone who studied Japan, as well as somebody who's transgender and kind of can give my sort of outlook on that as well. So, if I can help, it helps. So,
yeah, for sure. All right, well, as you said, everybody should go listen to the first episode. And if you haven't, read or watched Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts, I'm warning you, this is all spoilers. It's all about the back half of the series. So you don't want that, but you do. Maybe you're curious about Sacrificial Princess. Go listen to the first episode and then go watch it or read it and then come back here.
Definitely go watch it. JC staff is kind of a gotcha role in terms of quality. You can get something that's really good, like Sacrificial Princess, or you can get Requiem of Rose King, which was awful. So, it's kind of a roll of the dice whether you're going to get a good adaptation or a bad adaptation from them. But yeah, the fact that it's getting a full adaptation of the entire series, the quality of the animation and the writing has been really good, and they haven't really cut out a ton. If you don't have the time to read 15 volumes, or, like I did and read like 8 volumes in 3 hours, definitely go check out the anime. It is actually really good. And more people need to watch it because it doesn't really seem like a whole lot of people are. A lot of people are more than happy to talk about like My Happy Marriage, but then you have really good non-romance series. Well, I mean, this is a romance series, but there's more to it.
Fantasy politics are a lot of it, what's happening.
Yeah, there's a lot more to it, but series like this and the recently released Oku don't really have a lot of traction outside of the main audience. So I always try to recommend like shows like Sacrificial Princess and Oku. So it's like, yes, the romance series are great, but political intrigue is actually super dope too.
I always love a good political intrigue, yeah, but I haven't been watching stuff because all the streaming services are now so evil. So I'm like, can you put it on a disc and I'll buy it or something? I'm waiting for that.
Yeah, it doesn't help with the strike either. Oh, I mean, granted, this might date the podcast, but, at the same time, I don't know how long this whole thing is going to last. And it's kind of crappy that, they don't really fall into the category of essentially being allowed to strike. So it's like, keep pumping out those dubs because eventually networks are going to run out of shows. And I kind of have a feeling they might lean a little bit heavier on the voice actors to try to dub out some of their backlog. So, I mean...
Yeah, but then they don't pay the dub actors that well either, so it's like, ugh.
Oh, no, trust me, one of the videos I'm working on is about that whole situation because I have friends in the industry who are currently not being treated very well. So, it's really tough, and it makes it hard to justify signing up for those sites.
I could moralize about the subscription services all day, but we shouldn't do that, okay?
I mean, we can, but that's not why people are here.
That's not why we're here. We're not here for that. Okay, so we're here to talk about the back half of Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts. So we're gonna, a lot happens in these volumes, so we're gonna kind of try to explain what happened, talk about the major characters and themes that happen, and walk through it like that. Yeah, so I would say last time we kind of got stuck in the middle of a tiny arc where Lante, the captain of Sariphi's guard, was introduced, but we didn't trust him yet. We weren't fully on board with him yet. He's still a hyena folk who was the only candidate. You can't trust him. He purposely led them into a place with dangerous monsters so that he could look cool. So at the beginning of these volumes, we finished up an arc about whether or not to trust him, basically. And he was accused of attacking the king of the area that he and Sariphi had gone to visit. And Sariphi was like, I will prove to you that it was not Lante. I'm very confident that it was not him. And they're all like, okay, we'll give you a night to go figure that out.
But we're still going to throw him in jail for a night.
Yeah, we're gonna keep him here, and you have to go prove to us, Sariphi, that he is not the killer.
Plus, we need his sad boy backstory flashback too. So
of course, he's full of sad boy vibes. Yeah, so his backstory is, of course, he's hyena folk, so nobody trusts him, and they all hate him, and so he was trying to... His mom was very sick when he was little, and he was being a very good boy. He was like, I will earn money legitimately so that I can buy her medicine so that she will get better. And so he did all these odd jobs, and he finally saved up enough money to buy her the medicine. However, then everybody saw him running around town, and all the guards were like, hey, we don't trust you, kid. Where'd you get this medicine? You can't have been old enough, and you're a hyena folk. You can't have gotten this legitimately. Did you steal it? He was like, no, I didn't steal it. Go ask the guy. But of course, they don't just ask the guy. They take the medicine and get all rough with him, and his mom, dies. the lesson that he took from that was not that, like, he's very prideful in being a hyena. And so the lesson that he took from that was not like, oh, I should be not prideful in being a hyena. I just have to like climb the ladder of power, and then everybody will respect me if I'm up on this rung in a ladder that everybody understands, right? So that like informs his outlook on life, basically.
Yeah, it's really interesting because when you have a backstory like that, especially with the old dead mom trope, it's
Gotta fridge the woman, you gotta
yeah. Well, you can go either one of two ways with it, and it was actually kind of refreshing the direction he took, which was, I've dealt with systemic racism or xenophobia or whatever, some sort of species.
Racism throughout the story. He's the first one who was like, "You're a racist," and I was like, he just straight up said that. All right.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, it's refreshing though because you can either be like really bitter and turn into a villain over it,
Mhm.
or he could be like really kind of angry. I mean, he's already a little tsundere boy anyway, but
Yeah.
he could have gone like really like hardcore Tokyo Ghoul edgelord with it, and he didn't. He more took it as a challenge to try and become stronger, so that anybody who would want to look down on somebody like the hyena folk could be, they could have a chance to look at somebody like Lante and be like, oh, yeah, he's made it, so maybe I can make it too, and kind of taking the more honorable kind approach. And I think, Sariphi could see that ultimately, as much of a tsundere little sad boy as he was, there's a kindness to him and a determination to be good. I mean, to the point where he'll go and try to challenge Jorgman to battle, and not just like a sparring match, but like a straight up blood battle. And that's skipping a bit ahead, but the fact that he's willing to go that far to try and be the best Knight's Guard and that he could possibly be, I mean, he's loyal to the core. Like, pretty much from this point on, throughout the entire rest of the manga, he is he is Seraphi's ride or die.
Yes.
Like, outside of Psyche and Lops, it's Lante. Like, you'll get like Anubis will pop up every now and again. Of course, Leo and other people like pop up here and there. But at the same time, whenever anything happens, Lante's always there, and that kind of loyalty is really, really cool. And he will go to some extreme lengths in order to protect her. And he's just a really awesome character, and I could wax poetic about him for hours. But
yeah.
He's one of my favorite characters, and I really love that he took a bad situation and turned it into strength. He became a shonen protagonist.
Yeah, he became a shonen protagonist for sure. And yeah, as you say, he didn't. It's very easy for those kinds of characters to be like, I now forsake all systems. The systems are totally broken and not worth anything, so I'm just gonna be a little delinquent all of the time. But instead, he's like, fine. The system is currently being used against me, so yeah, I'm just gonna like force my way up into the system, and then I get to make the rules, and then I get to make it better, right? Like that's his whole thing, and you're like, oh, that's nice.
Yeah, I mean, and like I said, he could have gone the whole like, my life is darkness, everything is meaningless, nothing has. I mean, I'm like, he could have gone that direction too, which leans into the first one, but it's like, okay, well, he always had like a fun jokiness to him as well, like where he would kind of Marvel quip his way through a lot of scenes. Never when it was like really serious, but like, he's sort of comic reliefy, but he never really, it never was a detriment. You never felt like it was like, all right, the world is imploding, here's a quip.
Yeah.
He's not Phase 5 Marvel movies, so he actually is trying to do something there. But
yeah, he's always just says the hard truth. Like they'll be like, well, so if this outcome happens, like then it's all scot-free from here. And he's like, okay, but you're skipping steps. Like that's usually his quip is always like,
we could all die. It's
Yeah.
like, we could all die. You do realize that. No, is always fun hearing what he has to say in those situations because he is very pragmatic about whether or not they'll survive, and which is interesting. We'll come up to it later, which is interesting that he's so anal about survival and yet is willing to throw himself into worst possible situations.
Yeah, and totally willing to sacrifice his life for protecting Sariphi.
Which is funny because then we get the worst character immediately afterwards. Okay, I mean, we talked about it in the first episode, but I really have no love lost with Ilya at all.
No.
I mean, he came on way too strong. I'm just glad he disappeared after this, is all I'm going to say. But for those that didn't watch the first episode, he's like the annoying ex that will never go away. He's basically the sort of incel type character that Sariphi knew back when she lived in the human village, and he grew up to be really resentful of all beastkind, and then came to the castle and, was shown kindness and, was shown that, hey, here's Sariphi, she's fine, and fallen in love with this beast king, and man, maybe we could all live together in harmony. And then he tries attacking and killing. He never gets it through his head. And there was a point where the next segment is that he's introduced again, and you see this little armadillo child, this adorable armadillo child. They were really flexing on the cuteness there.
Based on Sandshrew, confirmed in a side note.
Yep. And so they introduced this little armadillo kid who, because the thing is, the human world and the beast world both have their positive and negatives. Political intrigue is a huge part of the series. And, the beast kind has the whole sacrifice protocols, but they also have their own racism and classism, and they have the whole hierarchy, and with the war and the way it is with the border, like if beast kind crosses over, humans will kill them, humans will kill beast kind. There's this whole like growing strife that goes on within it, but at the same time there's also human trafficking. So the humans, despite being the quote unquote weaker type people, also will go out and abuse the animals, especially like the younger ones, and try to take them. And I hope they didn't literally mean stuffed animals, because I think they literally meant stuffed animals, because they were, that was really dark. I mean, granted, humankind in general is capable of very good and very evil. It was like, even for Ilya, I was like, they're threatening to stuff this child. This is a child. And they are threatening to murder it, and he's like, I don't care what happens to this child. All beasts must die. And it's like, oh, okay, well, and eventually he does change his mind, and he realizes, oh, well, maybe this one kid is fine, so I'll save him. And so he stops the human traffickers, or at least that little subsect of the human traffickers, and helps out the armadillo kid, and then walks off into the sunset, thankfully never to be seen again.
Well, no, we do see him once more at the very end.
At the
there's a little glimpse of him watching the marriage, and it's like, no, he's not going to do that.
Okay, well, one background shot. Really.
One background shot of him.
Okay, well, he walked off into the sunset only to be dragged to his ex's wedding. So...
Yeah.
But otherwise, he's never really factored in again afterward.
No, Ilya still is like, I'm like, if he was more integrated into the story and less of a one-note character, I actually appreciate what he's doing, where it's like, actually, if you get to the core of Ilya, like, he agrees with Sariphi in a lot of things. And it's like, if you put it in a conservative versus liberal terms, like, it's like, actually, if you make blanket statements, you will agree. And when you see injustice, you will fight, usually, to make it right. But then, like, it's just he's not given room to be to grow, or like,
he's not really given a whole lot of room to breathe. And I think part of the problem is his character is sort of made redundant by Anubis, because he's also kind of the same way with, I don't trust humankind, I don't So they already kind of had a character like that, but reverse. And so I felt like if they needed to really flesh out one character, I think they made the right decision by fleshing out Anubis instead of Ilya. But I feel like, had they fleshed him out a bit more, I probably wouldn't be as sour towards him as I am. But he's definitely the weak
so
link
much.
of the series for
Yeah.
me. So
I feel like it's less about, him hating beastkind so badly and everything. It's more that it's just like he's just such a stereotypical male and like didn't listen to Sariphi in the first arc or anything. And you're just like, this guy is pushy and bad. Like, get him out
I
of
mean,
here.
we'll get to another character who kind of starts off pushy and doesn't listen, but at least he got an opportunity to develop. So it is kind of a bummer that, I mean, Elio was around for essentially one volume and then just kind of wandered off a bit, but at the same time, I don't really.
She felt like she had to bring him back for a hot minute, and you're like, you didn't really have to. I was good without that little bit.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, we get better characters after the fact. So, I mean, yeah, it is a bummer that he didn't get as much time to really develop, but luckily a lot of more cooler characters were introduced after the fact, so I'm not too heartbroken. I mean, we got a platypus, so
Oh yeah, the platypus is the best character for sure. No, well, I actually wanted to go back to the arc before with Lante for a second because at the very end, what happens was that Sariphi like does prove that Lante is innocent by finding the real attacker. But all along, it was like she frames it as like, I trust you, Lante. And then he finds out, that they're like, oh, humans can see more colors than beast kind. So she saw the fur and knew immediately it wasn't your color fur and found the attacker. And so, there's a moment where it's like, oh, did you really trust me? And she's like, yes, I both trusted you, and I also just have a superpower that as a human to be able to know that it definitely wasn't you, like both things are true. And he chooses to like believe her in that. And I'm like, good boy,
yeah, it's like that Arkham detective mode power where instead of being able to, like, she can see all the colors because you never really think about it, and then you're like, oh yeah, they're animals, so they have less of a light spectrum than humans do.
Yeah.
So
I feel like they never bring that up again, and they're always like, I don't know, they're dressed in clothes and talk about their eye colors and everything. And I'm like, this seems inconsistent. But you brought it up specifically to do this like trust exercise between these two characters. So, okay, I'll allow it.
don't think about it too hard.
Don't think about it too hard. Don't think about it too hard. I liked this trust exercise. So that's fine. So, yeah. So, after this little brief interlude with Ilya, so Sariphi, the whole point is like Anubis has been like, fine, if Sariphi can go to each kingdom basically, and with each task given her, if she completes it, without much fanfare and it goes smoothly, like eventually she's allowed to become not just acting queen, she become actual queen. So they're going around. So most things Sariphi has had to do without the king by her side. But then the one time they're like, all right, we're going on an assignment together. And so they go to this kingdom where they're like, we're pretty sure something bad is happening here, but they don't know what it is. And at some point, a small child jumps out in front of their carriage and is like, hello, I must speak to the king. And of course, the ruler of that land is like, get this child away from us. They disgrace our land. He cannot be granted an audience with the king. And Sariphi's like, I think we should hear what he has to say. And Leonhard is like, no, I agree with the king of this land. We cannot do that. That would set a bad precedent. But Sariphi throughout the whole time is like, I think we should go hear what that kid has to say. Got a bad feeling about this. I think he was trying to say something important. So eventually the king gets called back to, the main castle of Asmargo because there's other things going down that need his attention. And Sariphi's like, please leave me here so I can figure out what shady thing is happening here. And he's like, fine. You stay here and figure that out. So they eventually figured out that this country is employing basically slaves. A whole race of like gorilla people are being enslaved by these people. And Sariphi's like, that breaks the treaty, and now everybody knows because we used the Cyclops and my guard Lante to trick you here a little bit. Yeah, and so basically, Lante and Sariphi are like, we will free the indentured slaves here. And they do manage to successfully do that without the help of the king.
Although they did get help from the other princess,
Oh,
because
yes.
it is kind of funny that the simian race, that were the enslaved folk, have the strength to overpower and quite literally annihilate everybody,
Yes.
but don't because, well, for one, after hundreds of years of natural selection and peace and the lack of war and everything, they've become a little bit more kind and quiet and more dormant in terms of their willingness to attack. So, despite the fact the princess, because the punchline of it essentially is that the evil king goes to like try and kill Sariphi, and the princess just opens the bars just
Yeah.
like they're butter, and then is able to take out the king because they wanted to talk it all out. Eventually, like their whole plan was, yeah, we're slaves and we're being held captive, but maybe he'll hear us out at some point. When they realized, oh wait, no, they're not going to hear us out, then the gloves came off and they started attacking, when it came really in handy to have them there, is all I'm going to say. But
Yeah, so with her in particular, it was that they had already, like Lante and other people had already freed everybody else in there. So she felt like, oh, okay, nobody's in danger if I just bust out of here now. Like, it won't be taken out on my other compatriots here. So, all right, I'm here to save this chick who's trying to save me. Like, what's up?
that's a good princess.
Yeah. Princess solidarity,
Mm-hmm.
Gotta be there. So like that's kind of like the beginning of the arc. Then the real meat of it is that on the way to take the simians back to their land, Sariphi's ship is attacked by the head of this group that is working to overthrow Leonhardt, which is why he had been summoned back to the main castle or whatever, because Anubis has been snooping around trying to figure out why all the anti-monarchist groups have suddenly like disappeared and formed an alliance or something together. So she gets attacked by the phantom wolf Fenrir and his right-hand man Nir. I'm like, those are too close together, but anyway.
Well, I mean, it's Glepnir
It is
technically,
Glepnir.
but with Glepnir, they even made a joke. It's like, it's too complicated. Let's go with Nir. That way I can be Fenrir or Rear, and you can be Nir, Rear and Nir. So.
Rear Nir. It's bad. Okay. So yeah, so they attack the ship and Fenrir is like, who is the highest ranking person on this royal ship right here? And Sariphi pops out and is like, hey, that's me. I'm it. And he's like, that's a joke. Who are you? No, you're a human. That can't be possible. And she's like, no, for real, it's me. Like, I'm being serious. Like, come on. So he's like, fine. So he takes her away. And while they're, locked up together waiting for the king to come save them all, which she has explicitly told them not to do, she also gives Lante an order, like, do not come after me. You just got your butt kicked. So you're going to take the simians home, and then you're not going to come after me, which he does not obey.
No.
No, why would you do that? He obeys the part where he takes the simians home, and then after that, he's like, all bets are off.
I mean, that had to be miserable for him because he hates boats. He has the stereotypical, I'm a tough guy, but we go out in the ocean for 5 minutes and I have massive seasickness. But he also gets his butt handed to him by Fenrir pretty thoroughly. Not just then, but also later on as well. Because Fenrir, who is like the phantom wolf, the fallen son of the... Because the thing with Fenrir, and the whole reason why they're in this whole anti-monarch sort of society, and why he's kind of brought them all together, is because he used to be royalty, or like within the line of potentially becoming royalty, but the wolves, the Phantom Wolf, kind of that whole society thing, didn't have the power at that point, and he was always kind of viewed as the weak one. You don't need a consort. You don't need a bodyguard. You're not your brothers. You're not strong enough. You're not good enough. You don't have the ability to do any of this. But we will give you one chance to show that you're worth being in this family, or we'll cut off your ear Yakuza style and disown you. Turns out that fight happened to be against our boy Leonhardt in his cute baby form.
Cute baby Leonhardt.
Who bodied him in
Yeah.
one shot, and then was, thoroughly kicked out, and the only person that he had with him was Gleipnir or whatever. That was the only person he had with him. So he went off and kind of created his own thing, but his whole thing is power. He needs to be strong. I'll just say this. I think it is volume 9 or 10 where we're at now. But that whole section it just becomes a shonen manga for like a volume.
Okay. Yeah.
Because a lot of it is fighting. A lot of it is just the fighting and the attacking and the whole, I wasn't strong enough when I was younger, but then I went away and became more powerful, and now I need to have a power scaling battle with the most powerful, and it kind of goes straight into like Dragon Ball Z territory there, where
they go Super Saiyan on each other and everything.
Yeah, have big magic battle and everything. But I think it also kind of shows why I tend to prefer Shojo and Josei as a whole, is that with a series like this, one of the things I like about Shojo and Josei is that they're able to let things breathe and really do a lot of world building. And it's not world building for the sake of power scaling, it's world building for the sake of characters and characterization. So it would have been really easy to dedicate like 1 to 2 volumes to just epic fight scenes and battle scenes, because while all this is going on, Anubis and Jorgmund are fighting near as well, and they're having their whole thing. So it's just like battle, fighting. But within this whole section, too, there is a lot of character moments, but not only between like Sariphi and Fenrir. Fenrir, I don't know if he ever like really fell in love with her or fell in love with the idea of her, but kind of got to really know Sariphi because it's like, oh, here's somebody showing me compassion and kindness, something I've never experienced in my lifetime. So, that's interesting. I mean, I'm still evil. I'm still a comically evil supervillain.
He's such a comically evil supervillain.
But I can kind of see why this king likes you as much as he does. And then even like with Anubis, I thought like, because they left that off on a chapter there, I thought he was dead, because Nir's whole thing is that he can control his like blades with his mind. Yeah. And he has like this like dragon beast kind of thing. So Anubis gets hurt really badly to the point where he's like, oh, well, I guess, if I'm going to die, I'm doing it for my king. So, and then Jorgmund appears out of nowhere and kind of helps out and
is like, not today, Anubis, not today.
Not today, you're my friend and I'm not going to let you die. But kind of back to my point is that if you just have like a typical battle shonen type series, you wouldn't really care as much about these, because like I said, we're like 8, 9, 10 volumes into the series. You wouldn't really care as much because they spent all this time really building up this world, building up these characters, building up all these people that you care about. So when these fights are happening and when all these stories and everything are being fleshed out, even somebody as comically villainous as Fenrir, you feel more engaged in the stakes. And it shows that, it's not all just like big, bright bubbles and sunshine and rainbows in Shojo. when Shojo does action, when it does sci-fi, when it does horror, when it does fantasy, it's really good. And high school romance series are great and all, but when they really get a chance to breathe with these other genres too, it's amazing to see what they can really do with it. And it was actually as kind of stereotypical as it was, and as we can joke about it, it was this kind of section of the manga where I realized, oh, yeah, this isn't just good, this is great for me.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because they took something that could have just been kind of cut and dry and made it really interesting, really engaging, and like you kind of wondered. I mean, plot armor is one thing, but there were a few times there where I'm like, "Oh, are people gonna die here?"
Yeah.
Because I care about these characters. I don't want them to die. So, like, I was really invested at that point.
Yeah, I largely agree because I struggled because I did think that Fenrir himself was so comically like, what are you? Like, why are you just evil incarnate with no like consistent feeling backstory? But I thought that Sariphi's moments with him or like elicited by him were like the most powerful actually in the manga, at least for her. Like when she physically protects Lante from being like, no, you're taking me. You're not gonna kill him right here. You're gonna let him go, even though you've already wounded him really badly. So she like physically protects him, and Lante's like, "Oh my god, this is terrible."
But I want to die.
Yeah, but I want to die because this is so terrible. And she's like, "No." I think it's in this arc where she's like, he presses her to be like, why did you make me your guard if it wasn't so that I could give away my life for you, like protecting you? And she's like, I made you captain of the guard so that you could be the personal guard of a real queen someday. And it's just like, holy crap. Like, I am floored.
No, that was really powerful because we had established kind of at the beginning of this about the whole the Lante, the races and everything. So the fact that Sariphi's like, no, I didn't hire you because you're good at fighting or anything. I hired you and you're my friend and I care about you because I want you to stand side by side with me once I'm queen, to be that individual that can light the way for people. And it's like, man, that's heavy. That's
heavy.
Good heavy. It's good heavy.
It's so good. I also thought there was a moment where she does have with Fenrir where they're pressing each other about like, he's like, she's like, why do you want to be king? And he's all like, why does this king like you so much and everything? And she just, I forget exactly what she says, but she just totally like makes a confession to him and like how much she loves the kid. Like she's just like, I'm special because he loves me the most or something. And it's like, holy crap, that's like the most romantic thing that was said so far. And it was said to like totally the most awful person in this manga. But like,
yeah, they get a little mask off there now that we're kind of in the latter half, the relationship. Like, because you know how early on in a lot of series, shoujo or otherwise, if there's a relationship or a romance, they'll kind of hem and haw, like, oh, I think he likes me. No,
Oh, yeah.
I do like him. And what'll he think of this pretty dress I'm wearing? Oh, it's really nice. And oh,
so
it's sweet.
Jormungand and Amit's whole relationship, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of goes that route. But now we're at the point where they're like throwing out the heavy lines, the real love. Like, because, there's obviously, and we'll get to it later, like the whole power imbalance thing, but they start to become more and more equal as they go on. And as they become more equal, they're getting more, I don't say brazen, but more open and willing to be like, no, I really love you. Like, I really care about you. It's not just the doki doki butterflies in my stomach.
Yeah.
It's like, here's like an actual expression, physical expression of my love. And it's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is, you got me.
You got
me
I'm
there.
like, I'm so like invested now. Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah, and obviously to kind of close out the section, they have a big fight. Leo and Fenrir have a big fight. you can probably guess who wins because of the name of the manga, and there's still a few volumes left.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, Fenrir kind of set it up in his own pride that he didn't want to die by the king's hand and be embarrassed by him a second time.
Yeah.
So Nier finishes the job for him and then takes him off and realizes that his life no longer has meaning because he's lost the one person he loves the most. And they kind of just sit and stare off into the sun on the.
Yeah, I was like, then we never hear from Nier again. He's just out there somewhere.
Well, he lost. There was a love story there, man. There really could have been. There really could have been a love story there. Like, whether obviously Fenrir had sort of the idea of the heteronormative standard of king and queen and sort of the establishment of everything, but Nier really loved Fenrir. Like, genuinely loved him. And it's kind of like, oh, well, yeah, it's, he's the right-hand man. It's kind of like Anubis, and it's like he's the right-hand man. I understand why he loves him, because they're partners and friends, and it's like, the longer it goes on, the more you realize, oh,
yeah,
it might not just be friendship there.
There might be
some unrequited love there.
Yeah.
I mean, holding your boss's dead body, just staring off into the distance and looking out into the stars and being like, my life has no more meaning without you. It's like, okay, yeah. There's some love story here. I've read enough books to know where this is going.
Yeah. What got me was the side chapters where they were human and they were just like laying together on a couch, and I was like, y'all gay? Like, that's what's up.
This could have been a BL spinoff, and we never had it.
I mean, yeah, that's the next, after the anime, we're gonna go BL spinoff, Fenrir and Nier. Backstory.
Never know.
You never. I never say never in this media art landscape.
I mean, they always could go the sequel series too, but that's still pretty new. So there's not really even enough for like one season of anime yet. So it'll be a while.
Yeah,
it'll be a while. It started in like a couple years ago, so it's not like it hasn't had the time to develop like this one has. So.
Yeah. Well, so you also mentioned that, one of the main themes of this mini arc in particular was like the idea of pride. And obviously, like, pride's a pretty loaded word when you talk about animals in particular. I feel it's in a different way than humankind or whatever. So Fenrir's whole thing is that he's like, my pride has been taken away from me, and the only way to regain it is to become the most powerful being in the beastkind world and reestablish a hierarchy. Everybody wants to reestablish a hierarchy.
They just want everyone to go all Mad Max and fight each other to the death in the Thunderdome.
Yeah. He definitely did. He was like, I don't understand why everybody wouldn't want to go back to this terrible time we had where we just kill off each other in pairs and it's only like 25% of everybody's population survives. Like, well, wouldn't that be fun? It's like, no, nobody wants that. Like, what are you talking about? But yeah, so he's very prideful, and the good guy's view of pride is that, like, okay, pride actually starts when you love yourself, and then you help other people love themselves, and then you come together as a community of people who respect not only yourselves but everybody else. Like, that's how this should go down, and a lot of the antagonists are just always like, no.
Well, and it's also pride in a willingness to sacrifice yourself too, like with Lante, is that, and Anubis and Jorgman, although he probably wasn't in any real danger of dying, but he kind of throws himself into anything. He's just willing to kind of throw himself into any battle, but it is that sort of that pride to be willing to sacrifice yourself and willing to kind of give your all for the people you care about, and kind of having to push that pride down because there are a lot of people that care about you. So
Yeah, I was like, they also emphasize a lot of like, when should you throw your, like, how, Lante is like, why shouldn't I throw my life away for you right now? And Sariphi's like, it's not the time, basically. Like, that's not what you're here for. You have bigger things to do if you're alive, right? Like, so it's always like them trying to find the right line of like, yeah, how far can your pride take you? When should it be sacrifice and when should it be action is always like the tension that these characters have.
well, and I mean, it was just a little aside. It wasn't even really like a big thing, but one of the few like real moments we have like Amit in this section, and like this whole like this is going back like a few volumes, but to kind of go along with this theme is that Amit had given Yorgmon this amulet,
Oh, yeah.
this protected
Mm-hmm.
amulet thing, and then when Jorgmon got back, he was like, "Here you go, you can have it back."
Yeah.
And Amit was like, I gave this to you, it's a gift. And she feels all heartbroken and sad, and then later on realizes during a sparring session with Lante that, oh, it's because you got injured on your last thing. So it's sort of your pride feeling like, oh, well, I can't be good enough. I'm not worthy of your protection, your kindness, your love, for lack of a better term, although he's not willing to say it there, but like, I'm not worthy of this. And it's like, no, you are, because I'm giving this to you because I care about you. So put your pride aside. You got injured, yes, but you're not personally hurting me in this sense. The only thing that would hurt me is if you stopped caring.
Yeah.
So the fact that you care enough and you're willing to put your pride aside there, like, you don't always have to be strong around me. I care about you. So pride is definitely an overarching theme throughout the entire series, and especially kind of in this latter half when a lot of like the big reveals start getting nailed down.
Yeah. But before we get to the final arc, there was this little mini arc where we meet Sir
Yes.
Platypus. Oh, we have to say his full name. I gotta find it.
I have
okay,
it.
you
I
have
have
it.
it.
Gotta say it.
His name is Arthur Achilles Sigmund Sigurd Georgius Durman Hercules Perseus Alexander.
Oh, yes. Arthur.
Yes. No one except Sariphi can get it correct, and she just flexes on them by using his full name like 4 times
Yeah.
in one little page even, and even Lante's like, Arthur. Let's go with Arthur. Arthur's fine.
Well, Lante also starts being like, Sariphi, when are you just gonna call him Arthur? Stop flexing on me. Stop it.
Like, and no one can no, not even the king, because the whole point of this little mini arc is that during the whole battle thing, she loses her ring's power because she's given a ring when during the whole like, all right, well, we got to be separated now, so I'm going to go over here and deal with the potential war. You stay here and figure out the whole slavery thing. Here's this, like, this ring that you have is imbued with power, although apparently I guess it was just like one EMP shot essentially, and the EMP thing goes off and it breaks, so
Yeah.
it has to get a new ring.
Yes, the king gives her a new ring where he's like, okay, you told me that putting rings on your left hand on your ring finger is special, and before I just gave you that ring to like protect you from this land's miasma initially, and then I imbued it, with a magic spell to fight off anything that came after you while I left you alone. But this ring that I'm giving you now is a sign of my vow to like marry you and that I love you and everything. But then she immediately loses it to a pickpocket, which is where the platypus comes in to be important.
Well, I mean, he swims over because he wants to meet the king, and he wants to because he's worried about like not being cool, and it's like, maybe if I meet the king, I can
his
get
coolness
like
can
a
rub
percentage of his coolness. But pickpocket takes the ring, drops it over, because the whole thing is there's like this royal procession sort of thing going on, and because they've won the war, battle, whatever you want to call it. So they're doing this processional type thing, and there's a lot of back and forth on whether or not, should Sariphi be there, because they still hate humans. So do I go? Do I not go? And Leonhardt's like, well, you should go. And Sariphi's ultimately like, no, I'm not going to go. But then she goes anyway because Arthur's like, oh, so I want to like see the king. She's like, oh, well, I know where he'll be. Yeah. So like, let's go to this rooftop, pickpocket, drops the ring off the roof, falls into a body of water. Arthur jumps down, gets the ring, finally puts his swimming to good use. And then as thanks, hey, by the way, I'm the queen's consort. This is the king. King's like, what would you like? Arthur, Arthur. What would you like? And he's like, a handshake.
Literally rub your coolness off onto my hand.
Give me one firm soft paw handshake.
Yeah, she was like, "What? How was the handshake?" And he's like, "His paw pads were so soft." And she's like, "Aren't they?"
Yes. Like, give me a nice firm paw pad handshake here, and we'll call it good. And yeah, it was really sweet. I mean, it was a bit of a silly aside before we got to like the really hardcore like final arc. But I don't know about you, but when he gave her that ring, that was a oof. Okay.
All right, what the dedication is happening here.
Yeah, they really upped the romance, like I was saying. They really upped the romance in the second half. And when he gets really serious, there was a little hand waving, is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I was like, wait, no, I think before that, wasn't there like a moment where I was like, did y'all bone down?
Oh, yes. Oh, no, like, because early on, like, during the whole Amit thing, there was a moment where, like, she wanted to present herself to the king in, like, a really cute outfit.
Because Tetra was egging them on. Princess Tetra, too, was there.
Yep. And so she's all dressed up, and Leo's like, oh, hey, how's it going? And she's like, oh, no, this is all, so much. And then he just throws her on the bed and is like super romantic, not in a creepy way, but in like a hot, actual, like, consenting way. And is like, really like, well, you look really good, and it's all romantic and everything. I'm just like, oh. Okay. Yeah. Now I know why he's one of my number one husbands, both in beast and human form. There we go. That's a nice reminder every now and again that he's, this really sweet, powerful, romantic, complicated, incredibly attractive person. Yeah. So
they were both having the like, this is really awkward because we don't normally do this, and then they were like, let's get over it and bone down, basically. Just like, okay.
Pretty much. So,
which is actually how real life usually goes. So, like, yeah.
No, their relationship does develop. I mean, it's good that the series got time to breathe, because in a more short, if this series would have been shorter, I don't think it would have been as well developed. So the fact that it did get 15 volumes to really flesh out the relationship, I think that really helped, because it does develop really well over time, and as they become more equals, their love becomes deeper, and by the time you reach the end, it doesn't feel like their marriage is something that's tacked on. It feels like something that's earned.
Yeah.
So it's like,
if they didn't get married, you'd be like, what?
No, it's a really, it didn't start off healthy because of obviously the power imbalance and everything. It didn't start off healthy, and it kind of started off a lot too strong. But as the series goes on, yeah, their relationship is really good and really healthy for this kind of series. So, especially even with an age gap, it's surprisingly healthy.
I was like, yeah, the issue is that she's like 15 when they get married.
Yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, so after that, you have like the last 2.5 volumes, which are essentially dedicated to this big, massive final arc.
Yeah, it's kind of confusing because there's 2 threads to it. So the first thread is that the king is like, okay, now that we've established that Sariphi is awesome and has passed and has made like every kingdom she's visited fall in love with her, and we're gonna approach another night of revelation, and I hate this crap, he's like, all right, we need to actually establish better relationships with Joanna, the human realm. So he's like, oh, we need to send like an ambassador to give them a message to say we want to meet up and blah blah blah. And I will admit that I think their plan was really silly because they're like, Sariphi's like, well, I'm a human, so they won't do anything to me. And I'm like, yeah, you're a human. So, like, why are they going to believe you? They're going to think you're insane, which is exactly what happens.
Well, I mean, also last time she went to the human world, it was like, oh, yeah, she's really nice. Wait, were you that sacrifice? Get out. Like, yeah, they were
turmoil
really...
to our land, like, okay. Yeah. So I was like, I don't really understand. This plan is clearly like not the best thought out. But so Sariphi does end up being the one to go to be the ambassador, like mostly alone. She takes Bennu, her phoenix god beast man thing.
crotchety old man.
Old bird man. Yeah. So so he goes with her. But only she can understand him, so like nobody knows that he's talking and everything. So when she goes, she meets this soldier guy named Ocelot, and he's like, "Okay, you're weird, but I believe you. But also, nobody can read this message because it's in beast writing, and we don't do that here. So there's one lady I know who possibly can read it to vouch that your story is true, that it says what you say it does." So he's like, so go meet up with this lady outside of this village and ask her to read it. So Sariphi goes, and this lady is all like, is labeled a witch by the villagers and everything. So she's an outcast and like attacks Sariphi with like a sickle all the time and is like, get out of here, stop bothering me.
She loves that. She
does love that sickle. That sickle is her everything. But eventually Sariphi always wins these battles where she like never is like, okay, this person wants to wound me in some way, but I'm not gonna let that get to me. Like I'm gonna be a nice girl and just get what I want in the end. Nice politic my way to this solution. So that it ends up working because villagers end up attacking the not witch's house, and Sariphi ends up defending her flowers that she's been growing and being like, they're not poisonous, you're ignorant. Like, stop it.
I mean, they're edelweises. They're not going to hurt you. They're not going to
hurt you. And they're like, they're full of poison. She's like, you're ignorant. Read a book, like
we can't read.
Yeah, so eventually what you find out is that her name is Anastasia, and she is a descendant of, I mean, it's not revealed right now, but she, as soon as you look at her, you're like, that looks like our dude, the king, when he's human.
She looks like girl
King.
Leonhardt, basically. Yeah. Although, I don't know about you. Now, this obviously I've read it multiple times and the time since. Did you get more mother vibe or sister vibe the first time you...
I definitely thought it was going to be his mom, but then I was like, that doesn't make sense.
I thought it was his mom.
Yeah.
Legitimately, the first time I read it, especially with them kind of doing the hinting to the flashback and hating the beast language and the journal and everything, I'm like, oh, so it's his mom.
Yeah, I definitely thought it was
like, oh, it's like not his potential sister relative of some sort, because she has like these flashbacks to this like little kid who I thought for like a hot minute was like kid version of Leonhardt, but turns out it's Ocelot. And Ocelot and Anastasia were friends growing up and were super close, and to the point where like they had a little crush on each other and they were all cute and everything. But then kind of found out about her connection to the beast world, and in her mind, she thought Ocelot ran off. Like, oh, well, you're associated with the beast people, you possibly have tainted blood, and I'm going to leave you now, and I hate you, Stasia, I don't want anything to do with you. And runs off, and she becomes the bitter old witch at the end of the village. But then when the villagers come to attack, who pops up out of nowhere on his literal white horse? Ocelot. Ocelot pops up and is like, I'll help you by, the order of the king, you need to stop. Oh, and by the way, Stasia, I never stopped loving and caring about you.
I sent you letters all the time, girl.
Yeah, I always cared about you, and were you always this short? And really cared about her still, because his whole thing as a exorcist, and his whole thing is, it seems like it's sort of established when Sariphi gets there and kind of things are revealed, but not really fleshed out a ton because they have a lot of story to get through in a small amount of time. But it kind of seems like he is the person who, after Leonhardt lets the sacrifice go, like, they'll run into Ocelot, and Ocelot's like, here's some money, here's a house, here's your new name, go find happiness. Like, he's like the mediator for when Leonhardt doesn't do the sacrifice. It seems like Ocelot, knowingly or unknowingly, is the person that's like, all right, I'm going to help you find your new life. So, and he obviously cares a lot about, like, beastkind, and it seems like, and even when they go and meet the king, it seems like everybody, minus like the traffickers and animal stuffers, like, they all want peace. They don't want war anymore. They don't want this border between the human realm and the beast realm. They want there to be this sort of peace that hasn't been there for hundreds of years. But there's all this established dogma and established monarchy and on both sides that they're kind of hesitant to really ever do anything. So they're kind of waiting for a certain protagonist with balls of steel to, like, pop up and go, like, we need to stop this. I don't know. No, really, we're going to stop this. Okay, sure, shrug, and then, But they say that obviously they need to do, like, a summit type thing, so they can't really go like, hey, so we're going to de-establish the sacrifice system and we're going to change our entire way of life. We can't just hand wave that. So they need to have a summit and everything. So that's kind of where that goes. But meanwhile, while that's happening, there's some stuff going on in the beast world.
Oh yeah. No, there definitely is. Well, so it's like Sariphi kind of succeeds, gets the message across. They're like, we'll go talk about it and deliberate. And so Sariphi goes back to Osmargo, and so, like, the king's like, well, we got to tell all the beasts that we're, like, going to do this thing. And they're like, okay, we're going to do this then. So, he calls all the people to Osmargo to make an announcement about, like, trying to garner peace with humankind. But at that time, Judge Set, who you've probably forgotten about, and I could never remember his name unless somebody explicitly said it throughout this manga. So Judge Set has been suspicious that Leonhardt is part human and has decided to use magic to clear the miasma, forbidden magic to clear the miasma, to confirm or deny whether Leonhardt is human or not, which obviously confirms that Leonhardt is human. So this causes a whole ruckus, and they have to go hide Leonhardt. They run away, hide Leonhardt in that vacuum of power. Judge Set is like, I have proven to you by using these forbidden magics that only royals can use that I am of royal blood, so I am now king. And we are reestablishing a hierarchy among...
Everyone loves that hierarchy.
Everybody loves that
Everyone wants... But no, there's actually a cool moment within that before this happened, because Set had gotten into Anubis's ear. Because Anubis... I think Set wanted to see, is Anubis loyal to the kingdom, right, or is Anubis loyal to the king?
Yeah.
And there was a really cool... It's actually one of my favorite moments in the whole manga, even though it's kind of a small moment. is that they're kind of vague with the timeline here on purpose. But at one point, Set gets into Anubis' ear and is like, hey, maybe you should go check on the king and talk to him about this plan. Yeah, why don't you go talk to the king right now? And I don't mean through the door. I mean, why don't you go have a nice face-to-face conversation with the king? This might be a perfect opportunity to go talk to him face-to-face, because wouldn't it be really interesting if you were to go talk to him face-to-face and he wasn't who he says he is, or wasn't who he thinks he is, and isn't the kind of person you think he is? And so Anubis goes, and he's really adamant about wanting to see the king, but he's hesitating. He's really hesitating because as much of a curmudgeon as he is, and as much of a loyalist to the kingdom as he is, he really cares about the king. So he's like, he doesn't want his heart broken. And so he's really hesitating, like, no, king, I need to see your face. I need to see your face. And then they open the door and beast mode. So
yeah,
it was a really cool moment, because you do kind of get to see the seeds sown there, where within the canine folk and kind of the people who have been chosen over time, whether it's Judge Set or Anubis or what have you, that you kind of start to see the seeds that when Set goes and is like, I'm royal blood, boo, he's human, boo this human, that ultimately he's like, no, I'm going to stand with the king, and Jorgman's going to stand with the king, and, Lottie's going to stand with the king, and Cyclops are going to stand, all the established characters are going to stand with the king. And I'm not going to jump ahead too far, because we'll get to that here as we're explaining this. But it's nice to see that, it's not just loyal to this status quo, it's loyal to the people that you care about the most. But yeah, so they go and they hide out in the cave, and it's around kind of here where you start to learn who exactly Leonhardt is and why his mom isn't actually a rabbit.
His mom isn't a rabbit, no. Well, it turns out that, so the whole big thing about everything is that obviously Leonhardt is of royal blood, but it's that his dad had a twin brother who was exiled, because you can't have twinsies like that. It's not allowed. And the twin brother went and fell in love with a human who is somehow related to Anastasia, as mentioned, but is not Anastasia herself. Yeah, so they had a love child together who is Leonhardt, who was taken away because the previous king could not have babies at all. Like he slept around a lot, and none of them got pregnant. And so Set is a baby from a concubine, but from just somebody else that she slept with, not from the king. Yeah, it was a lot. There was a magic head oracle who had sewn his own mouth shut and was like a reanimated dead man to tell Sariphi these details, and it's like, okay, weird and creepy. And she just hugs it, and I'm like, no, girl, no.
Well, at the same time, I think, to give the author credit here, and I'm trying to look at this through a critical eye, so I'm obviously biased, but looking at it through a critical eye for this, I don't think they really had much of an opportunity to give out this backstory otherwise.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they could have not made him a horrible Full Metal Alchemist beast-looking thing.
That's what it
is. Literally looked like transformed Nina, and I'm like, ugh, okay. And especially when Sariphi's like, here, have a hug. No, I'm right there with you. I'm like, when's the last time that thing showered? If ever.
Ugh.
That thing's, I mean, I get it.
It was getting wounded by Judge Set and his magic. I had open wounds of, no.
Yeah. So, I mean, I understand. I mean, they could have not had him be as gross, but at the same time, I don't think there really was a better opportunity to deliver this backstory. So, I mean, if you're going to throw in a convenient plot device to dump exposition, I mean, might as well be an Oracle type character. Though, I don't know, maybe the author was just having a bad day, because in one of the little side things, mentioned how Ocelot was his favorite character design he ever did. So she ever did. Like, she really loved Ocelot and was like, I love this character design. It's my favorite character design. Why is he only in a few
Why
chapters?
did I make him this lovable side character who's super side?
Why did I make him this gorgeous, blonde, compassionate, incredibly hot, worthy of his own
He's
manga
his own Shojo manga protagonist, man. Yeah.
And then he's only a, as she put it, a quest mark character.
Yep.
So, like, oof. Like, why is this only a quest mark character? So maybe in hindsight, she was just like, well, fine, the next character I'm going to design is going to be so ugly. Just ugly. Make it ugly. That way I don't feel bad about it being one character in an exposition dump chapter. Ugly.
The most ugly thing I could think of out of my... Yeah.
That's my head canon,
like
is that she was so pissed off at creating all these hot characters that were only in for like a couple chapters, that she's like, well, this one's literally only going to be in like half of one chapter. So
yeah.
blob.
Ugly blob. There we go. Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, it sure was weird, I can tell you that.
But then, no, like, then it gets to the point where, you know, obviously they want to stage a coup, uprising, whatever you want to call it, because despite all the bad people in the entire series wanting a hierarchy again for whatever reason, literally every antagonist, minus Ilya, but he was just an incel, who cares?
Well, he just wants to kill all the beasts and be like, the hierarchy is only humans exist.
But like every other villain or antagonistic type character is hierarchy. So obviously they're like, oh, we can't let this happen. We want to, you know, establish a new world. People are down for this. Everything's fine. So this is kind of where we get the Avengers Endgame.
Avengers did assemble.
Because at that point, all the characters, basically all of the characters, you know, that aren't like in the wedding thing, like Ilya standing in the back, but like all of the characters that Sariphi had met and befriended and cared about and shown kindness and compassion to, and her, I guess, trials to become the queen consort, have all come to help her out. And so has Jorgmund, so has Anubis, and so has everybody. Everybody has come together to try and take back the kingdom in the name of King Lionheart and Queen Sariphi. And, you know, obviously there's a little moment there where it's like, oh, well, I don't know if he's in his weakened state, so will he be able to fight Set? Because Set has royal, quote unquote, blood and is like super powerful. But then Sariphi uses the power of protagonist plot armor and poof, now you're back in the beast form. And then immediately body Set. So
no, it's Amit got to do the one thing. She cut her hand so that she would overwrite the blood magic that Set was using to keep the miasma away. So she overrides it, and then, you know, the sky gets filled with miasma again, which, like, cool, fun, question marks, and then he becomes a beast again.
Yeah, that whole little section there was a bit... There was a lot going.
There's so much going on, yes.
They put a lot in, but I'm like, I kind of wish she would have done a little bit more in the end.
Like, we needed less Fenrir, more just, like, get right to Set. That's how I felt.
Yeah, a little bit. I think they maybe dragged that on a bit longer than need be, but I think those last 2.5 chapters there where it was like the big battle and everything was, I think that was necessary. I think they could have cut some of like the talking extra stuff out. But I mean, they could have trimmed a bit here and there. But I do, like I was saying, I do kind of wish Amit would have, because she had this whole like, she's a crocodile or alligator, whatever. Like, she had this sort of like violent like bloodlust to her in the pursuit of love that she had to her, that I was a bit disappointed that she never got to throw hands, that it was more just like, all right, cut, here you go.
She got to break Jormund out of jail once. That was the only other like semi-cool thing she got to do.
She kind of really wasn't as much of a factor in the latter half of the series as she was in the first half. But then again, she was traveling a lot more, and when your choices are Lante or Amit,
you're gonna pick Lante.
You're gonna pick the feral hyena with a bloodlust and an insatiable desire to never give up. You're probably gonna pick him over your handmaiden, or lady in waiting, whatever. So, but yeah, so they dissolve the miasma, poof, plot magic, and then Set just gets the absolute, I'm not going to say the word because I don't want you to have to put in bleeps, but you know exactly what I'm thinking. Beats the ever-loving you-know-what out of him. And finally takes back the kingdom. And then there we get the whole, we get the old afterwards after that.
Oh my gosh. Yes, they get married and live happily ever after. They have a child. Yay, but...
They have a spinoff.
Now they have a spin-off. Great.
Yeah, no, there's the sequel series that the writer has been doing now for...
It's going to be your whole life now.
Years. Yeah, The White Rabbit and the Beast Prince. I've been reading it. It's good, but there's only like 9 chapters. So, like, there's like 1.5 volumes, maybe 2 volumes out there. So, like I was saying earlier on, there's not enough for a full whole thing yet, not like an adaptation.
Yeah.
But it is really cute. Then again, I don't really think she's too upset, Tomofuji, because in one of the asides, she mentions that she wants to just live a simple, comfortable life, writing and drawing a series that she cares about.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's long form. If it's not, then, she'll find a way. But she just wants to write one thing she really cares about and live comfortably. So if it is this series,
she's fine.
Or this world, she seemed like she was really content with that. And honestly, I gotta respect the grind. I mean, the fact that, she had this series that ran in Hanata Yume, which is one of, if not the biggest, at least one of the biggest shoujo magazines that has had just some amazing series over the year, like, Cledser's Die, World is Still Beautiful, Portrait of Annette, like a lot of series that I love. Because I'm like old school, so I love like a lot of their 70s through the 90s series are some of my favorites. And the fact that they were put in between some of like the biggest series, and I think a lot of people would want to be in a position like this where they have a world that they created, characters that they created, and it's had enough success that they can live comfortably and write at a pace that you want to. Because she's not huntering herself. Yeah. She's not Oda. She's not doing the One Piece that, like, she's just releasing it as she wants to release it and is enjoying herself. So she did take 2 years off though. Yeah. So, I mean, she took a 2-year break and then was like, you know what? I'm gonna keep
going with this baby named Richard. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I can't really blame her there, but it was a really cute wedding and a cute ending and all wrapped up nice and neatly in a little bow, and
yeah,
it was sweet. And I actually really liked you kind of breaking the fourth wall here, but like I really appreciated the necklace she had, like you had mentioned in your note thing here, that or because for like a long majority of this she had the chains, but now she has this necklace, and it does feel really kind of cute and sweet that she was able to go from this this princess that was this girl that was deemed useless, essentially, that was just deemed to be nothing more than just a burden, not really worth, like being raised to die,
Yeah.
being raised like cattle, to the point where she's not afraid of thunder and lightning because anime girls are afraid of thunder and lightning. She's I don't know why that's
It's
such
such
a trope.
trope.
It's such an everything. Like it's everywhere. But she's afraid of thunder and lightning because that was when they told her she was going to die, and that was when she realized her parents had dead eyes.
Yeah.
And just there was nothing there. There was no love, no kindness, no empathy, no sympathy, nothing. It was just dead eyes. So that's why she's afraid of thunder and lightning. So to go from that to meeting this big giant beast dude who luckily happened to be actually a very compassionate and caring person, to then becoming this queen consort type person, which initially was just like, I want to keep her around because I think she's pretty.
Yeah.
And she's cute, and so I'm going to keep her around as kind of my plaything, to her really proving herself as somebody being worthy of the queen, not because of strength, of physical strength, but because of emotional strength and mental strength, and her kindness and her empathy towards everybody, regardless of whether they deserved it or not, but her willingness to try and build out a life where everybody can be equal, that it kind of rubbed off on everybody else, and was able to survive all of this to legitimately live a life that is worth living. Not saying you need to get married or have kids or anything, but the fact that she was able to have that happily ever after, given her circumstances throughout this whole journey, that's really impressive. And I don't know, like it wrapped up really nicely for me and kind of brought everything together. And I'm glad we're able to talk about this, because I kind of had to dance around it a bit in the first half of this, because there's only so much you can really say. But the reason why I love this series as much as I do is because of just the characters and the story and how everything is built up over time and how everything is developed over time. And yeah, there's little niggling little issues here and there and things that could have been trimmed down, taken out, built up a bit more, but they really spent a lot of time building people you cared about, to the point where when the spinoff came out, I went to Amazon Japan and ordered the first volume, because I really care about this world and care about the characters. And it is really, I don't know, it's really cool to kind of see everything all come together. And I really love stories where it has this kind of full encompassing narrative, and it's not just like A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
It's, there's meat on the bones, essentially.
Yeah. I think to that point, we got to talk, we haven't mentioned Anubis enough, actually, because Anubis's arc is the best? Question mark.
I mean, outside of Sariphi, yeah, probably. Yeah. He's probably the most developed character in the entire series.
Well, I loved the moment that you could see him kind of not break, but really realize himself. He has a moment, I think, in fighting Fenrir and everything, where he's like, duh, what species people are doesn't matter. That doesn't matter to me. And then you see him be like, oh, wait, damn it. I have to apply that to Sariphi, and I don't, and all of these things. And then, the whole final arc, you're supposed to if you're good at reading, if you believe in him, basically, if you trust him, you know that he's not betraying the king, but you're supposed to believe that he is. So he has a moment where he confronts Sariphi and he asks her a bunch of questions. And one of them, I was like, yes, Anubis, nail it on the head. Would you ask it? And like, I want to see what happens. Like he was like, so, you can tell that he's hurt because he didn't know. He was like, did you know that Leonhardt was part human? And she was like, yes. And so he's like grappling with his hurt that he was not trusted with this information earlier. And then he's like, okay, well, so if you didn't know that, like if he had been pure beastkind, would you have loved him? And it's like, yes, go for it. Go for the neck, Anubis. And then she's like, I don't know. He's like, what do you mean you don't know? She's like, well, like him being both is what makes him him and everything. And so, this whole time you're supposed to think that Anubis is like gonna like threaten to kill her. He has like a knife to her throat and is like asking her all these questions. And clearly she passes the test, and there was never any question that Anubis was like, yes, I'm loyal to the true king, which is Leonhardt. Like, it doesn't matter to me that he is part human. And so it's just really great to see Anubis have to like grapple with his own curmudgeonliness and like racism that he knows is wrong. Like he knows it's wrong, but he can't stop himself from feeling it and just like acknowledging that he's really been Sariphi's rival this whole time is what it felt like. Yeah, he's just so good. And like he gets stabbed like 3 times in this final stuff, even though he has a weak constitution. He's always getting out there, getting stabbed, surviving.
Yeah, he's surprisingly stabbable. But no, I agree. And I think a lot of it is just, it kind of goes along with the theme of kind of the establishment and kind of the adherence to a certain sort of status quo. Because Anubis doesn't do anything out of malice. He does it out of like a sort of feeling like he needs to.
Yeah.
Because he's been told for a majority of his life that, you've been chosen to serve the kingdom and serve the king, and this is what you do. This is who you are. This is what you do. You don't question it. You do it because that is what you need to do. So you hate humans. You are suspicious of everybody. You question everything. And you do it all because you care about the kingdom and the king. And at first, it seems like, oh, well, he's just the curmudgeon-y kind of stick in the mud character. He's the no one can have fun. I'm the fun ender.
Yeah.
You can't have fun while I'm here. But then the more you get to know him, the more you get to see his character, the more you realize that, in these like kind of monarchy type situations, and even still to this day, there's this sort of status quo that you feel like you need to stick to. And it's really hard to escape years and years of learned behavior. It's hard to unlearn behaviors. And the fact that through Sariphi and throughout this entire thing, that he was willing to sort of take his almost unshakable boundaries and his unshakable mentality that he had and actually grow from that. Yeah, he had probably one of the best arcs in the entire series. And what I like is that it's not just all of a sudden. It's piecemeal throughout. Like okay, girl, that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah.
Like you can do as you please. And then later on, when they're talking, and he's like, well, I don't know. Well, maybe. And then like, we'll have a handshake. And he's like,
yeah, I really think that handshake moment really stuck out to me too, where because like Sariphi also has a great way of like, there's a very realistic portrayal of her where she tailors how she speaks to people based on who she is speaking to. It's not just like Sariphi is X. It's like Sariphi is X, but here's a flavor of it for Anubis, right? And so with Anubis, she's always like needling him too, like where she's like, "Aw, thanks. Even you, I can tell like, you're behaving as your crotchety old self, so those stab wounds can't be too bad," or like, like that's like the kind of behaviors that she gives to him. So when she like shook his hand the first time and it was one handshake and he was like, no, and then they like both grab hands, and she's like, great, I'm glad you agree, even though you're such a curmudgeon, basically. And it's like, perfect.
But this would have been something that he would have never done before.
No, yeah, it's really heavy symbolism.
The fact that he was willing to do that, like you said, very heavy symbolism, and it kind of sowed the seeds for those final couple volumes where he is really kind of, I think ultimately he was always going to stick up for the king because of who he is underneath it all. But there is that, you need to work for the kingdom. You work for the kingdom. No, I work for the true king.
Yeah.
Like, it's that whole, like, mentality of it that, yeah, it's really, I love Lante because he's just my little tsundere boy, and he's a great little comic relief type character, and I love Cyclops. They are the mascot characters, but they help so much more than anyone gives them credit for. They help out so much and are so important to so many parts of the series, despite just being two little black dots. They're so important to the series, and even they have development throughout the series as well. But as much as I love love those characters, and I love Sariphi, it really is, Anubis, I think, is the best sign of the strength of her writing.
Yeah.
What I would say is Sariphi is an amazing character. Like, all the characters are amazing, but it's easy. I think it's easy to write a protagonist.
Yeah.
But I think it's harder to write a side character or a co-star and make the co-star fleshed out.
Yeah.
Because you can dedicate all the time you want to the protagonist and give them all of the narrative structure and the narrative, points and everything. And so, in a sense, it's easier to, of course you're going to get to know them. They're who's on screen, or they're who you're reading about the most. But to develop somebody like Anubis that much, that I think shows the strength of the writer, because she's able to flesh out this character who isn't, is an important character, but isn't on screen all the time, isn't on the page all the time. And so I think it really is a testament to her strength as a writer, just to make Anubis this really great, heavily symbolized character of structured monarchy and make him this really great character.
Yeah, and I would say, even though the tension, like, you always know that he's going to side with the king, when he has that moment where he's threatening Sariphi, it does feel like a real test of her still. It's like, all right, this is the final test, girl. Like, you got to pass my 3 questions or, like, I might actually kill you, except I won't, because, like, Leonhard actually loves you, but I won't let you be queen or something still, like, and it's just like, yeah, okay, like, this is his, like, the questions are a real struggle for him. The answers actually matter. There is tension in that moment still. The tension is just not necessarily, like, it's still the deflection away from what he is trying to do, which is like, I'm totally loyal to Set. Yeah, totally.
Well, because at that point, he's really trying to see once and for all, do you love him?
Yeah.
Do you love Leonhard, or do you love the idea of it?
Yeah.
Because it's easy to say it to his face, but say it to me. I need that confirmation once and for all of whether or not you love him.
Yeah. Oh, and then that final scene that the king had with Anubis, where he was like, I could have circumvented your will all along. I could have said, well, I don't care that you don't like Sariphi, and, like, just made her queen anyway, but I didn't, because we're friends and I want you to also, give your blessing. And I was like, oh, this is sweet.
It is really sweet. They have such a good relationship, Leonhard and Anubis, underneath it all. So, yeah, no, I thought that was really, really sweet.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic series.
Fantastic series. Okay, so that is most of the series. So we have 2 short segments here. So, like, just wanted to readdress the squicks/tensions of the series.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like it downplayed the sexual domination thing eventually. Although I do still think Leonhard in general is, like, when he's in his cranky, like, you must obey me mode, I'm like, all right, simmer down, bro. Like, nobody likes you in this mode. The age gap still does bother me a bit because I'm like, oh, you young girl, like he 21.
No, yeah, well, no,
25,
25.
even better.
Yeah, I think we mentioned it last time that and it's funny because I think I had brought it up last time is that the way he looks, you couldn't have known.
No.
Like the fact, I do think that was a bit of a misstep that she went out of her way to say she's 15, he's 25. Because to the average reader, to the average watcher, he could have been 18, she could have been 18. They could have both been teenagers. You would have been none the wiser.
Yeah.
So I do think it is a bit odd that she went to the length that she did to establish that, yes, she's a teenager and he's an adult. But I think, like I mentioned before with both that and the power imbalance, is that problematic media exists, but it's kind of up to you whether or not, like, how much that you define by it and whether or not how much that means to you. Because I think it's important for, like, if a series has problematic elements, you don't kind of have to throw the baby in with the bathwater. You can still enjoy the series as long as you acknowledge that, yeah, there are these problems that some people will find uncomfortable, and these are problems, and I do accept that these are problems, but I still enjoy the series overall for what it is. Like, a lot of people online seem to have problems figuring that sentence out.
Yes, they do. I definitely wouldn't not read this manga because of it, but I'm like, okay.
No, yeah, obviously it is a problem, and it's something that I thought, like, I have a problem with it. I really am not a huge fan of age gaps, so I do have a problem with it. I do think it is weirdly gross that it's even there, and I don't like the fact that it was established that they even had to establish the ages at all because you didn't really need that, and so it made me uncomfortable. Still love the series, still would recommend it to people, and it's still one of my favorite series, but I obviously acknowledge that that is a problem, and it's a problem that a lot of people are going to have, and it's something that I have problems with.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I mentioned this in the first one where it's like, okay, the power imbalance feels better in this because the whole point of what they're doing is to kind of try to get rid of that power imbalance, like not even just between Sariphi and the king. Like the whole point, like we just said, all the antagonists want to do is add hierarchies and all of these things, and everybody else is like, no, we want to get rid of those. We want to make the playing field more level. We want like equal opportunity access here. Like, like they're trying to get rid of power imbalances. So the fact that a power imbalance initially exists and then is brought to a more middle place is fine. The age gap, as you said, is just like, you didn't need to mention those ages. They are superfluous to any plot relevance at all. Like, they're not relevant. So for it to exist is just silly. And I still think another, like, again, it's somewhat addressed by this, where it's like, monarchy is good here, and you're like, okay, monarchy is good because they're trying to transfer what the meaning of monarchy has been traditionally in this world, where they're like, yeah, it's not about establishing this hierarchy and ensuring that the hierarchy stays in place. It's about the person in power has to, fight for the rights of the weaker people and do all these like very noble things. And it's like, okay, that's cool, but I still don't feel like it grappled with the overall like systems, the fact that other systems could exist in any way, like
they did try a bit, but yeah, they did definitely lean on the whole king, queen, prince, princess. Like it was never fully abolished or anything, but they did kind of with those two squicks and in particular the power imbalance of monarchy. They did try to tone them down away from the problematic style of it and more towards like the whole like fight towards equality type thing. But
yeah,
I mean, if they really wanted to do it, they could have just gone away with like maybe even like a leader type thing or like a chief or something. Like,
yeah, I was like, I feel like if we were like established democracy right now, like people would have nominated Leonhardt, so like that kind of thing would have happened.
He'd still be
Yes.
president. So I mean, they could have changed that up a bit. But I also think that is just kind of a fantasy
Yeah, it's just a
thing.
fantasy.
I mean, at least they didn't lean into slavery good like most isekai do.
Oh God. All right, no, we're not going to slavery corner. We're going
No,
to shipping
no.
corner. Very, very quickly.
Yes.
So as we said earlier, I believe that we are both like Nier and Fenrir are gay, right? Like they're gay for each other.
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. 100%. Yes. Super gay.
Super gay for each other. Love each other very much. Okay, what do you think about Tetra's crush on Anubis? We haven't brought that up yet.
A bit one-sided. I don't know why, but Anubis kind of read queer to me a bit.
Oh, totally, because he's like somehow Sariphi's rival, like that's what it feels like.
Yeah, he always read like either explicitly queer or maybe even asexual or just like I don't know. He never really read as somebody who would be, or definitely aromantic. Like he didn't really seem like somebody who would be vying for someone else's romance. So it definitely felt like Tetra was throwing herself at a brick wall.
Oh, poor Tetra. Yeah, it's kind of cute.
You're
though.
not an 8-foot lion beast. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Work on it, girl. Work on it. I know we didn't get much info on either of these characters, but the king's brother and his human lover, like, do we buy that story? Do we like it?
I do. I mean, it was told. I mean, otherwise that whole Oracle scene would have been pointless, and we would have had to just stare at that thing for no reason. So I'm willing to believe it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just like that would have been cool to know more about them. Like, I would like to know more. Is basically my conclusion about that.
I think they, and granted, this is just me. They could have had a 16th volume.
Yeah.
They just for the sake of it would have been easier for us to not have to stop sort of somewhat in the middle of an arc. We could have done 8 and 8, nice and even.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, they could have spent a bit more time developing that. So I kind of wish we would have seen more of that, especially since for a long time there, or at least for that first little bit, it really did seem like Anastasia was his mom.
Yeah.
So like I had more belief in her as being the mom than even the king's brother and the human lover kind of thing. So like it would have been better had they had more time than just Oracle exposition dump.
Yeah, and I mean she's mentioned in the journal that Sariphi takes from Anastasia, but I'm just like
Briefly.
Yeah. I'm just like I don't know. I feel like we only needed the Oracle or the journal. Like having both was too much for me. It bothers me.
Yeah, you could add one or the other.
Well, did you like Anastasia and Ocelot?
Yes.
Like
yes.
side manga with
I
them.
want that spin-off. I'm right there with the mangaka. I want more of
Put
them.
Ocelot in his own manga. Give it to him.
Because, well, not just because he's a hot guy with a heart of gold, but Anastasia had my buy radar going insane. Because I have such a crush on Leonhardt. And then it's like, here's girl Leonhardt. And my brain goes, ugh.
Your brain's like, all right, yeah, I dig it.
And then Ocelot's hot too. And I'm just like, I want more of these two. They have these. This could have been a great spin-off in all of its own. Look, here's a great Shojo protagonist and female love interest. Like either of them. The sickle-wielding witch and the hot knight.
Yeah.
Like they could have done more with them. But I love them as a couple and I really wish they would have done more.
All right, agree. They were funny. They deserved better.
Yes.
What about Amit and Jormungand? They were getting there. They were starting to be
there. They were getting there. They're getting there. I do wish it would have been a bit more explicit.
Yeah.
They not like explicit, but just, like more. I don't need to see all that, but just like more open about it.
Yeah.
So I kind of wish they would have had a little bit more there.
Yeah, I feel like in general with their whole characters, I'm like, all right, y'all are good and I like you, but pretty like one note,
Although I think if you had to really pick and choose the characters you had to develop, kind of wish they would have developed them more, but I can understand wanting to go for, Lante and going for Anubis more so. So I get it, because they were more important to the plot than the lady in waiting. And I mean, Jorgemon, like, there's only so much you can do with the noble knight with a heart of gold.
Yeah. You're like, so he is what he is. And then obviously there's Leonhardt and Sariphi, who are OTP, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, once they kind of knocked out some of the like the things we were talking about, once they knocked out some of the imbalance, and once you kind of, if you can, look past the age thing, like, they really established themselves as a very good couple. And there were a lot of moments there where I was getting, like, both emotional, like, emotional, and emotional. I was like, oh my God, okay, man, all right.
Yeah.
Like, both of them were definitely getting there. And there's just a lot of, even though this is like the 4th or 5th time I've read it, I still get those feelings. So, like, it's a sign of good writing if I'm still, like, if I can almost remember everything, like, word for word, I'm still getting that moment where I stop and go, yeah, that hits right there. That's the good stuff.
Yeah.
that makes the old heart go doki doki right there. Yeah.
No, for sure. I feel like it might even be better with a second read. So, 10 years from now when I read it a second time, I'll be like, oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Yeah, I would definitely, if not that, then I don't know if you're, well, yeah, we talked about it. You aren't watched because of, evil streaming companies. But if they ever get around to releasing the home video of it, I would definitely pick it up or just get it on, like, Amazon Video or something, because I know they've been.
See, I don't use Amazon for anything. But yeah, if I could buy it on some other digital service.
But yeah, like, if you could get it, I definitely watch it, because they do a good job of cutting out some of the fat, but also not really getting rid of anything important. So if you don't feel like reading it down the line 10 years from now, you could always wait 2 years and just get the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
Get the same thing out of it. So, because they're doing a full adaptation.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
well, it's good to hear that the pacing is not too wacky, since they're doing 15 volumes and 24 episodes.
So it's I think it's like 24, 26, and where they are right now is Lante. So actually, right where we are is where the anime. So in 4 days, the episode "A False Charge and the Lonely Hyena" is going to air.
Nice.
So we timed this out.
Yeah,
well.
I'm like, I gotta really get on editing the first one and release it, and then it'll be like gold.
Yep, and hey, out of both of the Shojo Beauty and the Beast manga that have ever been released, this is definitely the best one.
Yes, for sure. All right, well, I think that does it for Sacrificial Princess and the King of Beasts here.
I'm glad you brought me on. I was more than happy to be a guest here. And if you ever want to talk shoujo again, you know how to reach me. I'm always willing to gush about my favorite demographic.
Yes, oh my gosh. I mean, my biggest problem is that I'm like, I want to talk about everything, and I just don't have time for that. It's so hard. But yes, thank you for coming on, and everybody, thanks for listening to Shoujo and Tell. Comments, questions, constructive criticism, concerns, need to gush about your OTP? Email shoujoandtell@gmail.com or leave a comment on the episode's YouTube page. We're at Shoujo and Tell on Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram. I'll probably add more as the hellscape of social media continues to evolve. I don't really know what's happening anymore. Anyway, Mackenzie, where can people find you and your work on the internet?
Well, you can, I am at Mac Loves Manga on everything from Blue Sky to Twitter to Threads to Hive to Mastodon to every single social media platform known to man. Though, if you actually want to see me, where I interact the most, go to youtube.com at Mac Loves Manga, where hopefully by the time this video is up, I'll have released a few more videos because the summer season will have died down a little bit. And if you just want to hear kind of my random thoughts on shoujo, manga, anime, whatever, you can find me on Twitter. As much of a hellscape as it is, I do throw all of my things into the void there at Mac Loves Manga, so you can check me out there.
Great. So are you excited every time you see a new episode from us? If so, please consider leaving a rating on Apple Podcasts. This will help the podcast reach more hearts, or at least ears. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next time with Asher to discuss the shonen manga version of The Vision of Escaflowne. Yeah, that really terrible manga. We're gonna do it! We're gonna put it in our brains. For me, I'm gonna put it in my brain again, because I hate myself, I guess. And it's going to be so much fun, I swear. It's going to be fun. Everybody come along. Inevitably, we will talk about, like, the anime and the movie and all that good stuff that is actually good. So, everybody, until then, bye.
Oh no! Oh no!